Welcome to live coverage of the 2006 Republican gubernatorial primary on Kansas Public Television. This broadcast is airing statewide, including KPTS here in Wichita, KTWU in Topeka, and Smoky Hills Public Television serving central and western Kansas. I'm Dale Goder, Public Affairs Editor at KPTS, and I'll be co-hosting tonight's program along with Bob Beatty, Political Science Professor at Washburn University, and our political analyst on Kansas Week. Now, before we meet the candidates, I'd like to remind our viewers that we'll be taking email questions during the broadcast and submitting as many of them as we can to the 6 candidates in our studio. So if you'd like to participate, the email address is ask@kpts.org. That's ask@kpts.org. Now here's Bob Beatty to introduce the candidates.
Thanks, Dale. We have 6 candidates here in the KPTS Wichita studios. Jim Barnett, a physician and state senator from Emporia, Kansas. Ken Canfield, founder of the National Center for Fathering and from Overland Park, Kansas. Rex Crowell, he served in the Kansas legislature from 1975 to 1994 and is from Longton, Kansas. Dennis Hoover, the 2002 gubernatorial candidate for the Libertarian Party for governor and is from Ozaki, Kansas. Robin Jennison, former Speaker of the Kansas House and is from Healy, Kansas. Timothy Pickell, a lawyer and former Vice Chair of the Wyandotte County Republican Party, and he lives in Westwood, Kansas.
Thank you, Bob, and this will be a fairly informal format throughout the course of this program. We're going to try to get as many email questions in. We want to get to the major issues of the day. Bob and I will be helped to spur that along as we move through the program. But we're going to begin, give each candidate a chance to say hello and take a minute to identify who they are, what they stand for, and give what may be their final televised stump speech of the campaign. We'll take them in alphabetical order, and we'll begin with Senator Jim Barnett.
Well, good evening, Bob and Dale. It's a pleasure to be with you and all of you tonight. I am a farm kid, practicing physician, school board president, and state senator, running for governor for some very important issues facing this state. First of all, school finance. I very much want to support schools in a way we can afford. We need to grow this economy, though, to afford schools and roads and many other things facing this state. And to do that, we need targeted tax cuts to jumpstart this economy and bring real leadership at this time to grow the Kansas economy and bring good jobs and wages to this state. We need to deal with the Kansas Supreme Court. We need a court that reflects your values. We need to change how we select them. I support the federal system and want to discuss that tonight. Lastly, we need to deal with immigration. I do not agree with the governor that we should give driver's licenses to illegal immigrants. We should not. We should be an English-speaking state and an English-speaking nation. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And next is Ken Canfield.
Hi, I'm Ken Canfield. I'm a native of Wichita. It's a delight to be back here. The reason I'm running for governor is simple. We need fresh leadership to guide this state. So often this entitlement mentality can overtake even those in the political sphere. I believe right now we need somebody who has fresh, proven leadership that can guide our state to a prosperous future. I know the entrepreneurial spirit of Wichita. I've surveyed and looked at all the issues and problems facing not only us as a state, but the nation. And this is what I believe. As Kansas goes, so goes the nation. We can set an example because it's in our destiny to do so. My focus is to strengthen the economy, and bringing the private experience and the proven success is what I will bring to the table. In addition, we need to strengthen households. There isn't a check big enough the government can write to take care of the cost of failed families and households. I have a lot of experience in that. And finally, we need to bring a measure of accountability and efficiency to the government, because that is what the government should do, be efficient and serve all of Kansans. I look forward to your comments.
Thank you. And next is Rex Crowell.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in. I am Rex Crowell from Longton. I'm an attorney, I'm a rancher, and I'm a school psychologist. Also, I'm a Vietnam veteran. I've spent 20 years in the Kansas House of Representatives, 12 years on the Kansas Turnpike Authority Board, and 12 years on my local school board. I have 5 beautiful daughters and 1 beautiful granddaughter. Politically speaking, I'm probably the more moderate, or the most moderate, of all the candidates here today. And I want to talk to you a little bit about politics instead of issues. We'll get into the issues later. Kathleen Sebelius and the Democrats are, if they can win election again will have another 4 years to solidify their position in Kansas politics. I think that there's only one candidate, frankly, that can defeat Kathleen Sebelius, and I think I'm it. There's a number of reasons why I think that, but the most important one is, if you've noticed Kathleen Sebelius's ads recently about her with the military.
Time, Rick. Thank you. Sorry to cut you off. We're going to keep this moving. Next, Dennis Hoover.
Hello. My name is Dennis Hoover. I'm a lawyer in Ozaki, Kansas, which is up by Lake Perry. I'm running for governor because this situation that we are dealing with is serious. The situation is multi-pronged, unfortunately. We're spending more and more money on education and getting poorer and poorer results. And there is a way to change that. It's in my book. This is my campaign book, and you can find it at commonsenseinO6.com. I passed out about 4,000 of them, but there's a lot more of you than there are books. So, number one, I'm against the war in Iraq. We can't afford the war in Iraq. We're going to have to be paying for $6 gasoline soon. And I'm a Vietnam veteran. Having been a, what? Oh.
Right, now we'll move on. Our next candidate is Robin Jennison.
Thank you, Dale. Good evening. I am Robin Jennison. I'm a farmer stockman from Healy, Kansas. I farm with my father and brother out there. I served the decade of the 90s in the legislature. Got elected assistant majority leader, appointed chairman of appropriation, got elected majority leader, then got elected Speaker of the House. My running mate is Dennis Wilson from Overland Park. Dennis has had a distinguished career, serving 4 years in the House of Representatives. He was also Johnson County Treasurer, served very successfully there, and currently is a state senator. Dennis and I think we can do better in Kansas. We think we can have schools that are controlled by our local elected school boards. We think we can revive the rural economy. And we think we can change the court system to where representatives of the public are in charge again, where we truly have representative government. With your help in this election, Dennis and I can do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, Tim Pickell.
Good evening. I'm Tim Pickell, and along with my running mate, businessman and banker Jeff McCalman, we are the fresh team, the fresh leadership that can unite the Kansas Republican Party and defeat Governor Hillary, that is Kathleen Sebelius. We are not part of the legislative morass. Rather, we're clear-thinking community leaders who have a specific plan to take back Kansas, and this includes restoring sound fiscal management through a state auditor and through long-range budgeting, economic expansion, and an open discussion of our ideas. Like Lincoln before me, another centrist lawyer from the Prairie, I'm a lawyer from Prairie Village, and I was raised by an Army colonel who twice served with General Dwight Eisenhower, was on that staff, and by a soft-spoken, faith-filled lady who, by example, demonstrated hearts of love and the importance of service. And I'm teachable. I don't have a voting record that Governor Sebelius can distort. She doesn't want to face Jeff and I. Please listen carefully tonight, and we ask for your vote on Tuesday. Thank you.
And thank you. And now we're going to begin the questioning part. What we want to do before we get to some of the big issues is get a sense of the nature of these campaigns. We want you to understand who's viable, who's not, and what's on the table when you go to vote, if you haven't already, and by the time the polls close on Tuesday. So first, the question I received from an average citizen that happened to be out on the golf course, and he said, I'm a Republican, I want to vote for the guy who's going to win. Who's going to win? And I said, you know, I can't tell you that, but we'll ask them. So the question for each of you is, what evidence is there at this point of your campaign that demonstrates that you've got the support not only to win this primary, but to defeat the incumbent governor in the general election? We'll go in reverse order on this, and we'll begin with Tim Pickell. And I'll give you 30 seconds.
Well, I've got my yard sign up and the head of the KRAA's yard. I've been on the phone with the Mainstream Coalition today, and they're telling people to vote for me. I've talked to people all over the state. I'm the only guy, folks, that went to every county on Monday, put up posters. The posse went out. Young, energized people are involved in my campaign. I'm on Facebook. I'm using internet. I'm taking the tools to the people, and I know I can win. We've done more with the money we've raised than any of these candidates, and we'll be able to campaign on that issue, my main issue being a state auditor, high-speed internet access, and those kind of things that are specific to Kansas needs and revitalizing the rural economy. And the message is out, and we're Seabiscuit, and we are going to close, maybe by a nose. We'll win.
All right. Next, to respond to that question, Robin Jennison.
We've been in 105 counties before I named my lieutenant governor running mate. Together, Dennis and I were in 60 counties. We've just had our bus tour in over 70 counties. We've only had a couple of counties that we have not been in twice. We have worked this campaign very hard. That's how we're going to beat Kathleen Sebelius' hard work. A number of newspapers across the state, over a dozen, have endorsed Dennis and I's candidacy. I think partly because of the hard work, partly because of the message that we have, partly because of the diversity in the background, the legislative experience that Dennis and I have.
Thank you. And now we'll turn to Dennis Hauver for that answer.
Well, Kathleen Sebelius is a very nice woman and very bright. We differ on whether government should grow or whether it should get smaller. She believes that government has the answers to our problems, and I believe that government is the problem. I believe we need low taxes because we're going to be paying $6 for gasoline. We're going to need more money for our disposable income. However,
I'm sorry, your time's up. Okay, and the question is, what evidence is there that you have a viable campaign that can succeed in not just the primary but the general election? Next up, Rex Kroll.
Well, the truth is I don't think any of us know exactly where the electorate's at. I think we're all guessing. I know before I filed, I talked with a lot of people, took some little polls, and the truth was that people were saying they didn't have a candidate to vote for, and that's when I decided to run. The only thing I can say is I've gone across almost all the state and most of the counties, and the reception has been very good, very positive. That's the only real evidence I can support. I would disagree with my friend Tim that he's gotten more bang for the buck on his campaign. I think I have, and I think that'll show.
Your time's up. Thank you. Now we turn to Ken Canfield.
Well, I think this is what we need to face. We have a governor that's very popular nationally. I'm a fourth-generation Kansan that has also proved to be a success story nationally. I've worked with 12 governors. First Lady Laura Bush flew to Kansas City just to visit me this last fall and review the successful programming. I think I bring that to the table. Nobody does. And in addition to that, I do believe the grassroots is key. Whoever can ignite the grassroots and bring fresh vision and leadership can beat her this November and win in the primary.
Thank you. And lastly, Senator Barnett.
Well, Dale, that's a great question. First of all, the polls show that Jim Barnett has the only team that can win against Kathleen Sebelius. Secondly, we've raised more money than all the other Republican nominees have been able to raise the entire campaign. But thirdly, most of all, as message, we have the answers, the solutions that Kansans are looking for schools, for jobs, for the courts, for immigration. Thank you.
All right, now we're going to turn to Bob Beatty to follow up on this theme with a question about the campaign.
Yeah, it's natural to talk about Kathleen Sebelius, but this is, of course, a primary in which there should probably be differences between the candidates. Dale, there has been some communications between a couple of the candidates, their staffs, and some of them have been fairly harsh. And you may talk about that if you'd like. But the question is, are there character issues or character differences between any of these candidates that the voters need to know about before they vote? And who should we start with?
Why don't we start with Robin Jennison and work the order from him?
In my opinion, this is about the issues. And I think that we've all had an opportunity to discuss the issues. I think that there are issues, and if I win, there are issues that several of the candidates have brought up that I plan on talking to them about. So I think that in my opinion, there are no character differences that anyone needs to know about. It's a campaign about the issues. And I think that we've done a pretty good job in the Republican primary of keeping this campaign on the issues as it should be. And because of that, we'll go forward into November with a unified Republican Party, and I think that we will be successful and take back the governor's office in the state of Kansas.
And Bob, you and I have been tracking the email. This is primarily an issue, a concern between the two, what are considered to be the front runners, Ken Canfield and Senator Barnett, and I think what we'd like to hear is from them how they perceive what you just described as that character issue.
Yeah, there's been communications between the two, those two candidates that hasn't been what we might call pleasant and cordial that we've seen in some of these debates.
Okay, so we're going to meet each of those two a chance to speak to that. Senator Barnett, how would you describe that debate that's going on largely in the email community, but in the grassroots as well?
I think the most important issue is that we have integrity about message and integrity about positions. And what I think is important to the voters of this state is that we do not misrepresent someone else's position. And that is what unfortunately has occurred. And I think what voters want, they don't want to be duped. They want to be given data that's accurate. And ultimately, they are going to want somebody who has some experience and some credible answers to the problems facing the state.
Okay, Ken Canfield?
No, I don't think there's any character issues. I think, as commentators have said, this has been a surprisingly compatible race. And I think the leadership that I've expressed nationally will speak for itself. I'm a consensus builder. I've worked with Vice President Al Gore, John Edwards, Laura Bush, George W. Bush. I'm about building things. I do believe facts are critical, and if you go to the website, kencanfield.com, facts related to issues are important. We've released everything because transparency is key. I want the voters of Kansas to know everything about me, as well as important issues that are out there.
Your time's up, sir. Thank you. Bob, you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, some political science studies have shown that in the primary campaigns tend to be more conservative for Republicans, and the voters tend to be more liberal for Democrats. If you win this primary campaign, how will you appeal to the moderates that are out there that aren't voting in this primary? And maybe we should start with Rex Kroll, because he started talking about this in his opening statement.
Well, I think that the forums we've gone to across the state have been very clear that I'm the more moderate candidate in a number of social issues, possibly even financial issues. It won't be difficult for me to appeal to both sides of the Republican Party. I would point out that my running mate is a Democrat turned Republican on the day we filed, so I think I can appeal to a broad spectrum of the electorate.
Okay, Dennis Hauver, how do you reach the moderates?
Well, my issue in this whole race is an issue that cuts across moderates and conservatives and goes to what's good for us, the people. And I think that we need to stop the Iraq war because we cannot afford it. That's what I'm offering to the people of Kansas, a simple referendum, or to the Republicans of Kansas first, but then to everybody. A simple referendum.
Your time's up, sir. Thank you.
Vote for me if you're against the war. Wait a minute.
No, you will. No, I'm sorry. We have the rules. 30 seconds of response. Please try to fit your response in that window. We'll turn to Mr. Canfield.
Threw me off this discussion here.
That's right. Primary voters tend to be more conservative, and so we have the moderates in the general.
Well, of course, moderates or Republicans, I believe that reaching out and showing that you're a consensus builder is key. My history is full of that. And there are issues like limited government that are key Republican principles that I know will not only appeal, but I intend to invite them in because they have ideas that will inspire conservatives with respect to this limited government piece.
Thank you. We'll turn to Senator Barnett for that response.
Well, thank you very much. If we picked 10 issues tonight, we would not agree on all 10. We're looking for 6 or 7 or 8 we can agree on. And those kind of issues will bring moderates and conservatives and independents and many Democrats home. Funding schools, growing the economy, dealing with the courts, having the state deal with immigration, those are the things that will bring people home and elect us in November.
Thank you. And we'll turn to Tim Pickell.
Well, folks, don't be fooled. There is a tremendous difference between at least 3 of the candidates and several of the rest of us. I'll label myself a moderate. I'm probably a conservative moderate. I'm using the term pragmatic idealist because that's the way leadership should be. My father was an Army colonel. He served under Eisenhower, and those 2 guys would be labeled liberal today by many in the Republican Party. And I'm saying this because it's the truth, and you all know it. We have wedge issues that divide us. I am a clear-thinking individual that normally can find consensus. I'm transparent and I'm open, and that's the kind of governor I will be. I don't care what your opinion is. I want to hear it. But at the end of the day, I'll make a reasoned decision.
Thank you. And lastly, Robin Jennison.
Well, thank you, Dale. And, you know, I have never considered myself a conservative or moderate. I've considered myself a Republican. I am who I am. And I have a long history in the state legislature of working with both groups. I have what I believe in. I recognize other people have principles that they believe in. And we've got to work together to move Kansas forward. I have a history of that, very successful in the legislature. That's how I'll attract the moderates in the general election campaign.
Thank you. Well, we said we'd take your emails. We've got a number of them come in. We'll start with one of the more contentious issues, and this comes from Mark, and he asks, my question is, how do the candidates feel about illegal immigration? What will they do to prevent it? Do they favor harsher penalties on employers? So let's take that, begin our order. Let's begin with Robin Jennison on that.
Illegal immigration is probably one of the biggest issues in the nation right now. The challenge that we have in this state is Governor Sebelius signed a bill that gave in-state tuition to illegal immigrants, something that we don't give citizens of the United States from other states. She also recommended or brought up the idea that we have driver's license for undocumented workers. Both of those have been very difficult for the state of Kansas. Illegal immigration costs us in our school system as well as our health care system.
Okay, thank you. Let's turn to Ken Canfield.
Well, illegal immigration is big. I am against in-state tuition for illegals. In addition, no driver's licenses. But I issued a press release, the only one of the candidates, that took it a step further. Governor Bill Owens, our neighbor, a good friend of mine, noted there were many who were illegals on social service support. He moved them off. They're going to migrate to Kansas. We need to make certain that anybody on SRS support is a U.S. citizen. That's clean and simple.
Thank you. How about Senator Barnett?
Yes, very clearly. I oppose in-state tuition for illegal immigrants. I know too many friends and neighbors who can't afford to send their own children to school. I do not support driver's licenses like the governor has. We should be English speaking in this state and in this nation. The methamphetamine issue, if we want to deal with that, most of the methamphetamine in this state comes across the border. We have to secure the border.
Thank you. We'll go to Tim Pickell.
My answer is clear. Whenever you, as a parent, reward bad behavior, you get a lot more of it. So let's stop rewarding bad behavior, illegal behavior. Everybody said it, no driver's licenses, no in-state tuition. That's the starting point. Then I'd like to see us create a 2 to 3 year plan where the penalty for hiring an illegal immigrant is clearly stated. I don't want to shut down any business in Kansas. It would have unintended harsh consequences. But it's time to start attaching some type of penalty for hiring illegal immigrants if we're going to stop the influx into our state. It's that simple. Make it nominal initially, make it harder the second and third years. There's a way to stop the influx, and I'm against illegal immigration.
Thank you. Rex Crowell.
Well, illegal immigration is that. It's illegal. None of us, I don't think, up here support illegal immigration. What the feds need to do is to get off their duffs and pass a guest worker program of some kind, and we need to secure our borders. It frankly is very scary that we're apparently not able to secure our borders. The only services that I would think that illegal immigrants should get would be emergency medical care. We have to provide that because it's simply the humane thing to do. Also, we must remember that children born here are citizens of this country.
Thank you. And lastly, Dennis Hauger.
We got 10% of the Mexican national population in the United States. We're going to go into economic difficulties here. So I think we ought to bring the troops home from Iraq and secure our southern and northern borders if that's what people want done. But illegal is illegal. And I know Americans that can't find jobs, so I think they ought to come first. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob, let's let you take it another direction.
Well, let's move to education. I know that some people talk about a little bit about education here in Kansas. First, we'd like to ask each candidate's response to the press conference and decision by the Kansas Supreme Court, and also possibly tell us where they think Kansas goes from here now that the decision has been made. Can we start with Senator Barnett?
Excellent question. First of all, the school finance bill that the legislature passed and the governor signed, and now the Supreme Court says maybe is okay, leaves the door open to more litigation and more lawsuits, outspends revenues $800 million, and drives us into debt and a tax increase, or the state of Kansas becomes the first state in the nation to own casinos. So now more than ever, we need an economic plan to grow this state, to have enough money to afford that and the many other issues facing this state.
Timothy Pickell.
Folks, education is our top priority. It's what's historically driven the engine of this state. It's why businesses come here. I think it's very misleading to blame the courts. The courts, I'm thanking the court for doing its constitutional job here. They let loose of the case for good reason, to depoliticize it. We needed a funding bill. We've needed a significant funding bill for 3 or 4 years, and lack of leadership, primarily by the governor and to some extent by the fractious legislature, led you into this mess. This was a case brought by school patrons such as yourselves to get someone to do something with a legislative study crafted and requested by the legislators themselves. So don't be fooled by this rhetoric. I'm pleased with the decision. I'm promoting a state auditor, though, to follow the spending in education and other areas to make sure it gets spent well.
Robin Jennison.
Well, from what I understand, the court has released school finance, so now it's in the hands of the legislature, where it should be. And I think to say that the court was right, I think gives up on the idea of representative government. If we think the legislature or the governor is not doing their job as far as funding our schools or the education policy that we have an opportunity when we go to the polls to change the legislature, change the governor. Not turn that over to 7 people, unelected by no one, that meet behind closed doors. This is an important issue, and if we care about representative government, we should want that authority to be with the legislature and the governor.
Okay. Dennis Harbor.
Well, we've been spending more and more money and getting poorer and poorer results. I bet probably 50 to 70% of the money spent in education is spent on administration. I think we could cut that out by having the plan that I have is to have each school an independent entity run by a board of trustees elected only by the parents of the children in that school.
Your time's up, sir. Rex Kroll.
Well, now more than ever, education is where it's at. We can't short our children. And my response to the court decision is that it was a good decision. I'm glad they made it. I'm glad they didn't come back and say we've got to go back and get more money. And in regard to the court dealing with this case initially and setting dollar amounts, the court had no choice. I mean, the legislature is charged with providing an adequate education across the state, and they weren't doing it. And the court simply stepped in and did what they had to do to make the legislature face its constitutional responsibility. Question now is, where will we get the money? And that's the question that's got to be answered. And what I would suggest as governor would be to squeeze the penny as tight as we can, look everywhere we can, cut out middle management.
Time's up, Rex. Thank you.
Ken Canfield.
Well, if you saw the Topeka Capital Journal front page, my running mate's picture prominently was displayed with a smile. She is the one that engineered this. She is a consensus builder. I am delighted like she is. Senator Barnett voted against that. I'm delighted that it passed without a tax increase. We need to simplify the school funding formula, and Wichita students alone receive $600 per student to kind of bolster some sagging investment in the past. So I think we move forward and we'll grow the economy, but we need somebody who has experience with that.
Okay, thank you. Let's turn to the emailers again. Walter and Barry both emailed related questions. They're from different parts of the state. One of them asks, what would you say has been the Sebelius administration's biggest mistake, and how would you rectify it? And the other question is, what would you say is Sebelius's greatest achievement, and how would you improve on it? So you got a two-part question there that you'll want to respond to, and we'd like to have you actually respond to that question if you could in those 30 seconds we give you. Why don't we start with Robin Jennison on that one?
I think Sebelius' biggest mistake was her inability or her unwillingness to lead during school finance. We have 165 legislators, each represent their own district pretty good, but we elect one person to represent the state as a whole, that's the governor. I don't think she did that. That's her biggest failure. I think the biggest thing that she's done, I think that she was very active. along with our congressional delegation, into getting the Big Red 1 brought back to Junction City, Kansas. I think that was a good thing on her part. I think probably anybody that would have been governor would have done it, but you got to give her credit for being a part of that.
Thank you. How about Tim Pickell?
I'm going to echo that. The lack of leadership is appalling. She's a follower and not a leader. She's good, she's bright, but she's not a leader and doesn't like to get in the fray, and she usually chimes in after the fact. The Big Red 1 was a good accomplishment. I also felt like it was nice that she was proposing something for the disadvantaged in health insurance, and I would support that.
Thank you. Let's go to Rex Kroll.
Well, again, I'll echo what's been said, that it was the failure to lead that is her biggest shortcoming. Probably her best accomplishment was trying to get something done in the healthcare area. But I think the failure of leadership, again, caused that initiative to fail, and I think I could get that through.
All right. Dennis Hauver?
Well, Kathleen Sebelius, like I've said, is a friend of mine and a very good woman. The difference between us is that, and one of the problems in her administration is that she wants to grow the government and make it bigger, and I want to shrink the government drastically to make it efficient. Her achievements, I think, could better be addressed by other people here. I'm not exactly sure of what I would say she has achieved.
Your time's up, so we'll move on to Senator Barnett.
Yes, the greatest failure certainly has been to fail miserably on school finance. Her last school finance bill she offered was over 3 years ago, and that was to increase property tax, increase sales tax, and increase income tax. She has made effort with health care. Her proposal for health care was to extend and expand entitlements, expand welfare, and pay for it with a tax increase.
And Ken Canfield.
Well, I think the governor has become well-known nationally. I think she has worked to raise the image of Kansas. But having a Democratic governor hold the land of Eisenhower to say hostage to values that I think are much different is my big concern. Her stand on immigration, her stand on late-term abortions, and her stand on taxes are just not where the principled Kansans that I know are.
Thank you. Bob, you want to take this to another
Sure.
area?
It was recently reported that Kansas, in a study, is the third most typical state in the United States, and that's not in a bad way, meaning that it's a very diverse state. But we see that all the time, especially with western Kansas. But there are certain problems, such as declining populations in western Kansas. So I'd like to ask the candidates to elaborate on the problems regarding rural development, and also how do you attract teachers and doctors to those areas that are declining in population in the state?
And this is so important, we'll give them 45 seconds. How about that? Why don't we start with Tim Pickell this time, work that way.
Well, I've been talking about a rural revitalization plan that's very specific. First of all, you need to get high-speed internet access throughout Kansas, or no business will locate there ever. Second of all, you need a limited but 2 to 3 year tax credit incentive for investment strictly to revitalize and rehab the downtown main streets in Kansas, such as has been going on in Hayes, Wamego, and other such towns. Thirdly, you need to be a leader in the country for ethanol and other energy resources that we're not doing now. Sebelius has chimed in a little bit, but to hear the governor of New York talk about it, you'd think it was their idea. We have the resources to be leaders in ethanol and other productions of energy. Let's get with it. And then be a governor that visits those areas and encourages them. Internet will also get telemedicine and educational resources out into the rural communities. It's already happening in Hayes, and that is a marvelous tool we're not using.
Thank you. How about go to Robin Jennison?
Well, when you talk about rural Kansas, I am from rural Kansas. I'm from a little town of about 275. It doesn't get much more rural than that. I'm probably the only candidate that has the understanding of rural Kansas and really the heart for rural Kansas to do something about it. One of the things that I think Tim just mentioned, which is exactly right, ethanol and biodiesel have great opportunity for rural Kansas. I think it's going to fuel a new enthusiasm for rural Kansas. But the fact of the matter is our young people cannot come home because there are not the jobs to guarantee them a future after they graduate from college. So the most likely people to lead the revitalization of rural Kansas are those very young people. And it's because of that that I visited with the folks at Fort Hays. We're going to expand upon the Entrepreneur Center that's here at Wichita. We're going to try to create a rural center for entrepreneurship in Hays, Kansas. We will give those young people the opportunity and the tools they need to begin the revitalization of a diverse economy in rural Kansas.
Thank you, and we'll go to Dennis Hauver.
Well, economic development in this country and in this state is a function of taxes. Government has us so by the throat that it actually decides whether we're going to grow or not. If I become governor, I would cut taxes to well below the level of taxes charged in surrounding and competing states. When that happens, because we're going to have small government, don't forget, when that happens, business will come thundering into Kansas. It's all money. Thank you.
Thank you. It is Rex Kroll.
Well, economic development can be helped by utilization of the investment credit. That's one of the areas I prefer, expansive use of the investment credit. Also in our rural areas, I've been pushing all across the state the idea of getting our universities involved and in the development, the research, development, and production of alternative energy, not just the biofuels, but solar as well, and certainly making greater use of our wind capability and getting more wind farms into the state, and a lot of things like that. My administration also would be much more business friendly. I can't count the number of small stores that I've had tell me how they were entrapped in the area of selling cigarettes to underage kids, and the fine now I think is...
Time's up, Rex.
Thank you.
Ken Canfield.
My running mate, Kathy Decker, is from Clay Center, Kansas. My wife's family is from Meade, Kansas. I've traveled western Kansas. Consolidation isn't the answer, opportunity is. I think taking the benefits of the eastern part of the state, that is the entrepreneurial spirit and opportunity through access of venture capital as well as the internet and access to market, is a way to grow things. I do know too that water rights, property taxes are key because so many are struggling during these drought conditions, and I think someone who is sensitive, who understands the big picture of business and ties to the first district will come out with a winning plan, and I believe I have that.
And lastly, Senator Barnett.
Thank you, Dale. I'm from the 1st District, a little town of Reading, 250 people. It's pretty small, but that's my background. 4 specific things to grow the economy in a rural state. Number 1, get rid of the death tax. You've paid it once, you shouldn't pay it twice. Number 2, start phasing down income tax rates for all Kansans so you have more money in this economy. Number 3, increase dependent exemptions, $500 for families across rural Kansas so they have more cash in their pocket. Number 4, a great Ronald Reagan type idea, 10% investment tax credit. Any business, large or small, farms included, will drive this economy. We need to support health care, we need to support hospitals. When we grow the economy, doctors and teachers and many more will come.
Thank you. One of the key issues for Republicans every election cycle is, of course, the abortion issue. We've had several emails about them. I'll use one. This is from Mark and Marla, and they ask, I'd like to know where each of the candidates stand on Kansas liberal abortion laws. And we'd like to limit this one. I think we all know what that issue is, the scenario of the Roe v. Wade, the limitations and the opportunities of the state. So we're going to give you a brief 30 seconds to respond. What would you change as governor on the issue of abortion? And why don't we begin with Senator Barnett on this?
Thank you, Mark and Marla. First of all, I have a 100% voting record with Kansans for Life. I am pro-life, have been that way from day one. I'm endorsed by Kansans for Life as well. We have a terrible cloud over the state with late-term abortions. That's the very first place that I would state when we are killing by the hundreds viable, healthy babies. It's a shame.
Thank you. Go to Ken Canfield.
Well, I'm unashamedly pro-life. I believe in the value of life when it is so fragile, at conception, throughout the whole life. And so I'm submitting myself to those that know this and know my background. I will do anything to get clinic regulation up, I will do everything to curb late-term abortions, and I think that cloud is close to lifting, but you need the right leadership, and I too am endorsed by Kansans for Life.
Thank you. And Rex Kroll?
Well, my policy is on my website, and I'd ask you to look at it. In the first trimester, I support abortion available on request. Second and third trimesters, only to preserve the life of the mother or to prevent serious physical disability being caused to the mother. Also, in the second trimester, I would allow for 2 psychiatrists to say that somebody was suicidal and could have the abortion.
Thank you. Dennis Hauver?
Well, I'm against abortion. I think that as well as killing the baby, it causes great amounts of suffering for the people who are in that situation. I'm against abortion, but I would fight for the right of any woman who made the decision, because we get down to a freedom issue here. And I don't think government should have anything to say about it. It's up to the woman and her family.
Thank you. We will now listen to Robin Jennison.
Dale, that's a simple, short answer. I have a 10-year record as a very pro-life legislator, and that would continue as governor.
Okay. And we appreciate the brevity and the interest of time. And we'll lastly, Tim Pickell.
Well, I'm personally opposed to abortion. Until Roe v. Wade is overturned, folks, abortion is going to be legal in Kansas. We can tighten down the partial birth abortions. They're tragic. We have as many legal restrictions otherwise as the Supreme Court will allow under Roe v. Wade, and we all know that. The day that Roe v. Wade's overturned, if I'm governor, there'll be a statewide referendum initiative started to let everybody in this state decide that issue. And let me say one more thing. Who on earth in this state is not pro or in favor of life? Sanctity of life issues go from the unborn to the aged, and we need to address all those as sanctity of life issues.
Thank you. And Bob, we'll turn it over to you.
Another topic that we get lots and lots of questions about is gambling and casinos. And the question is, what is the role of gambling and casinos in Kansas economic development? And if you're against gambling, are you willing to try to get rid of the Kansas lottery? And we'll start with Senator Barnett.
Well, first of all, for the state of Kansas to become further involved with gambling, we have to become the first and only state in the nation to own casinos. If you're worried about corruption now, if you're worried about issues with Abramoff, it just opens the door broadly to more corruption. So I do not support state-owned casinos. I do not support expanded gambling in this state either. And if you look carefully at the issue of economic development, it's a drain, it's a curse, it closes businesses, we have increased divorces, and many more bad things happening.
Okay. Ken Canfield?
Well, Bob, I think you moderated an event at Washburn University about this whole issue, and I'm totally opposed to expanding gaming or even bringing it in any way, shape, and form. As a social science researcher, you just can't make it work. Not just the economy, but you look at all the negative costs, and I believe any expansion, even Indian gaming, is not good. You also mentioned the lottery. It would be wonderful to sunset the lottery, but what we need to do is give Kansans vision and opportunity, jobs that are there, and that's why we need somebody with experience to push that forward.
Thank you. Robin Jennison?
I think what we have to understand in Kansas, I mean, we can talk about the social costs of gambling, and they're there. I mean, we all know they're there. But the problem that we have in Kansas is it's here already. We have 4 Indian casinos that we have compacts with. That happened during the Finney administration. We can't do anything about them. They're lifetime compacts. We collect no tax from them. We'll never collect tax from them. We have no ability to regulate them. We have casinos, riverboat casinos in Missouri. 38% of that market's in Kansas. We have people going over to Kansas City, Missouri all the time and gambling. We lose that money. They do more than gamble while they're over there. And now on the southern border of Kansas, we have the Oklahoma casinos.
Dennis Hauver?
What is government doing even addressing gambling? And why should government regulate anything, much less gambling? If people want to gamble, they're going to gamble. And I'm in favor of people taking responsibility for what their actions are. If they want to take their paycheck and gamble it away, I can't stop them, and I don't have any desire to. I may counsel against it, but these are personal responsibility questions. Rex?
Well, I would support expanding gambling and expanding casinos. I would want the people to get to vote in an area where a casino is proposed to be located, and would want them to affirmatively vote for it. They shouldn't be ran by the state. Robin is right. We're losing all sorts of revenue to out-of-state casinos and the Indian casinos in Kansas. It's not like people are not going to gamble if we don't allow casinos to additional casinos in the state. A good.
Thank you. All right.
Oh, we have Mr. Pickel.
Sorry.
I'll make it quick. I'm philosophically against expansion of gambling in Kansas. However, I would consider and likely sign a bill that is limited expansion where it already exists, which primarily would aim at the woodlands. It's already going on there. Although, folks, I want you to think about this. Do you want to tell your kids you're going to go out and pull slots for education? It's just not the answer. We don't want state-owned. We do not want state-owned casinos.
Okay. We've had a lot more emails than we can use, but we're going to reward the first person that sent us an email. It's an important question, and we're going to make it a two-parter. It deals with transportation. The specific question that James asked, and James is from up near Mankato and Smith Center, and he asked, if you're elected governor, will you work to continue getting Highway 81 fully expanded and upgraded so it's a continuous extended Interstate 135 from Salina to York, Nebraska? That means a lot to the folks in the north central part of the state. And then take 5 minutes to answer that with a yes or no, and then give us a quick description of what you think transportation should look like in Kansas under your administration. Why don't we begin with Ken Canfield?
Well, the 10-year plan is set to expire when this governor takes office, whoever that may be. We need to continue to keep our roads safe and strong and expand wherever possible. 69 going to the southeast corridor is key. 81 also is key. As to the impact of that immediately, I'd have to study it. We need to grow the economy so we have the additional revenue to expand infrastructure. That's one of the roles of government.
All right. Senator Barnett?
You said I had 5 minutes on that question, Dale. I think 5 seconds, right?
Sorry. It seemed like 5 minutes sometimes.
Yes to the first part. Second is very critical because we have robbed the highway program. We've overextended ourselves, and then we've taken money. Now we've bonded. We've become a debtor state because we're not controlling our spending. The key is leadership here to create a budget that balances so we live within our means and yet fund those essential parts of government that includes good highways.
Thank you. Dennis Hauver.
Well, maybe other folks don't feel this distinct possibility of an oncoming inflation or other economic dislocation or problems, but I keep thinking we're going to have that if we get to $6 gasoline. And so I think we ought to keep the roads we have now, but I really believe we ought to start filling up the Treasury to take care of problems we're going to have that aren't our fault. They're national and international problems. And the Iraq War is one of them.
Thank you. Your time is up. Rex Kroll?
Well, yes, in regard to 81, it's a major cross-state corridor, and certainly I'd support it. I think I can take a great deal of ownership in the 1989 Comprehensive Highway Plan. That plan actually built more roads than it promised, and I think that's the only state program that I know of that's turned out that way. We have a problem in that the governor took some of the money for the current highway plan, the 99 highway plan, and said she'd found waste and issued debt. Well, it's going to make it much more difficult to pass another plan, but I would work hard to pass another 10-year plan.
Tim Pickel.
Got 30 seconds. Yes to 81, yes to 69, and yes to the southwest quadrant that's cut off from the rest of the state highway system. I've had a long discussion with them. So Biggest pulled $800 million, folks, out of the last transportation plan, and that's literally screwed the system, and we need to get back to that. Secondly, and listen to me closely, please, on this, we need a state auditor to manage all areas of our government spending, including highway spending, to make sure this time we get the bang for our buck. I'm the only candidate talking about that, and we need that badly to manage our money, including in the highway systems, but yes.
Thank you, and Robin Jennison.
On the 5-second answer, yes on 81, and to extend my answer, I would like to join Tim Pickel and what he said about Governor Sebelius and what she did to the transportation plan. And realize I said transportation plan. In 1999, instead of a highway plan, it was a transportation plan. We began to put money into railroads airports. We need to look, and we need to extend. Our thinking needs to go beyond highways in the state of Kansas. The legislature just this year put money into Mid-Continent Airport. We need an airport in the state of Kansas. We need air travel in the state of Kansas if we're going to be successful. We need railroads. We need to have a comprehensive look at the transportation we've got in this state.
Thank you. Bob?
Yeah, Governor Ryan of Illinois put a moratorium on executions in that state because of the questions raised by DNA evidence. Could you, in 30 seconds, tell us how your thoughts about the death penalty may have changed in the last few years, if any, due to the relevance of DNA testing? We'll start with Robin Jennison, because he ended last one.
My thoughts have not changed on the death penalty relevant to DNA. I think DNA should be used in cases moving forward. If there's some opportunity to go back, but the time that we have that someone is on death row is adequate time for someone to bring evidence forward.
And Canfield?
Well, I think we all know here in Wichita, the Carr brothers, there's another incident in Kansas City where there was a crime that's unspeakable. We need to make sure the death penalty is valid. My views have not changed, and I support that. And as far as DNA testing, yes, we need to utilize that, and that should be submissible evidence in a death penalty hearing.
Jim Barnett?
Well, first of all, to let you know what my views are, I support the death penalty. Terrible situation, of course, to consider, but under those heinous crimes, I support the death penalty in the state of Kansas, and DNA should be part of the evidence in the investigation. Certainly, the issue with the Carr brothers brings this issue very close to Wichita, where we're now, for this TV show, sitting. Also, the issue of a pregnant woman who is 9 months pregnant. We have 2 deaths in that case, not just 1.
Timothy Pickell?
Well, I did a long study in law school my second year that actually, you might be surprised to know, showed that in states that had the death penalty and states that did not have the death penalty, there was virtually no difference in the murder rate. Most murders aren't committed or not committed because of the death penalty. Having said that, I'm very concerned that no one be put to death. Just as much as the rest of you in the state are concerned about killing an innocent child, I'm concerned about killing an innocent born person that may or may not have committed murder. And let's make sure we enforce it fairly with DNA evidence, but I would enforce the death penalty.
Rex Kroll?
Yes, my view of the death penalty use hasn't changed. At one point in time in the legislature, I carried the death penalty bill. For heinous crimes, as it currently is, the death penalty should be left in place.
Dennis Hoover?
Well, I'm in favor of the death penalty as regards guilty people, but I'm also aware that there's an innocent man on death row in Kansas. His name's Philip Cheatham. I defended him. So I'd rather err on the side of caution and not have it, because innocent people get convicted on occasion. Thank you.
And that's it. Well, we're getting close to the end. I think we'd like to give the candidates one chance to say the issue that, we can tell you what the issues are, the viewers can, but what do you think is the thing that should be in the voters' mind when they go in to cast that ballot on Tuesday that speaks to your agenda for the state of Kansas? Kind of turn that into maybe a closing moment as well. And we'll probably be out of time at that point. So let's begin. We'll begin with Tim Pickell.
Well, I'm a fourth-generation Kansan, and I'm passionate about this state. They talked about bleeding Kansas, and I think my family has shown their commitment to this state. The main issue one of the issues that got me in the campaign was education. I'm glad we're moving in the right direction. Folks, I think we need an executive who will lead. I think we need somebody who has fresh ideas, who's not tied to a voting record. I'm promoting a state auditor. We're one of 4 states in the country that does not have one. Think about how you manage your checkbook at home. We need that to manage wasteful spending. That's what I'm all about, because once we cut wasteful spending, there'll not be a tax increase in this state.
Thank you. Senator Barnett.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be with you tonight. The issues facing the state require strong leadership with real answers and real solutions. The economic engine outside of Johnson County is broken or sputtering. We need something to get started on an economic recovery plan. That's why I've given specific examples of tax cuts to grow this economy. This state needs someone who will do more than say, take 2 aspirin and call me when I'm president.
Thank you. Ken Canfield.
Well, the issue of fresh leadership is key. I bring that to the table. I've gone the next step. The economic plan that I've submitted also includes venture capital. That is important to the future, to Raytheon, even to the Wranglers. And I would say this, tax cuts alone don't get it. We need leadership, and that's why I've taken the Taxpayers Pledge with Tim Pickell. I will not raise taxes under any circumstances in my administration. You can count on that.
Thank you. Robin Jennison.
Thank you. I think this state needs someone that can hit the ground running. We've got budget problems because of a governor who has not used the best judgment in constructing her budgets, not used the best judgment in taking money from the highway plan, increasing the bonding of the state. Our property taxes as a percentage of state and local taxes is up. We need someone that understands the state of Kansas. We need someone that understands the legislative process. My running mate, Dennis, and I have the best understanding. We have the best record as it relates to past experience in the legislature. We're the most geographically diverse. We think that we can do better in Kansas. All we need is a chance to try, and with your help, August 1st, we can do it. Thank you.
And Dennis Hauver?
Well, it's really simple. In my opinion, the decision that you're all going to face at the polls. I have ideas for changing Kansas government and making it more effective and more efficient and more servant-like to us. But I've decided that the basic referendum question here is, are you for the war? In which case, you should vote for one of my esteemed colleagues, and they're very nice people. Or are you against the war?
Thank you. And lastly, Rex Crowell.
We must maintain and provide for an exemplary education. Second thing I have talked about is an issue, alternative fuels research, development, and production, and then affordable health care, and fourth, doing something about the theft and burglary problems.
All right. And a punctual end to it. Bob, thank you for assisting us. I want to thank the candidates for showing up here in this last moments of the campaign. Encourage all of you who watch this program to get out and vote Tuesday and make a difference in the future of the state of Kansas. Join us for our public affairs programming as we follow that election this following week as well. Thanks for joining us. On behalf of Bob Beatty and Dale Goder, good night.